saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And this is the word of our Lord. are by you in your presence, the beauty of the earth, everything that you have made us and gave to us. We are so blessed to be worthy of you. We thank you for making us worthy of you. Dear Lord, we know we have prayer requests. Lord, please put your hands on Tyler Whitehair and the Whitehair family right now. You know he needs your healing and they need your touch for comfort right now. Dear Lord, we have other prayer requests, and we have a praise for Mike, who's not able to be here this evening, for his mother, Jean, and her 3-month checkup and no cancer. Dear Lord, we ask that you open our eyes, our hearts, our ears to discern this evening. And we ask this in your Son's name. Amen.
So our second reading this evening comes from Micah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, with specific attention to verses 6 through 8. Listen now for the word of the Lord. Hear what the Lord says. Rise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the controversy of the Lord, and you enduring foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a controversy with his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? In what have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and redeemed you from the house of slavery, and I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what King Balak of Moab devised, what Balaam, son of Beor, answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the saving acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? This is the word of the Lord. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. No justice, no peace. Black lives matter. All you need is love. Be the change you wish to see in the world. These, along with others, are just a few of the chants and signs which were seen and heard at the marches all across the country last weekend. Some signs were humorous, like this one, so bad even introverts are here. And some were more serious in nature, like this one. It says, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And even children got involved. I myself did not march due to previously scheduled engagement, but I know many people who did, and I was with them in spirit and in solidarity. I also know many people who opposed the march and don't understand the reasons why it was taking place. Now, McCormick Theological Seminary has a significant commitment to social justice. We were all encouraged to get involved as much as we could. This included attending marches and protests throughout the city of Chicago, as well as traveling to other cities where movements were happening, such as the Black Lives Matter movement in Ferguson, Missouri, after the death of Michael Brown. Despite the encouragement from seminary professors and administration, I never attended any of the marches during my 3 years of seminary. Why? I was scared of what people might think. I had classmates who attended protests and marches, and they had been arrested and spent several hours and even days in jail. And I wasn't sure if that was something that I was willing to do, or if that was something that I would be willing to risk, being arrested and spending time in jail. What would my friends think? What would my family think? And how would this impact future employment opportunities? I had an excuse for everything. Then I started dating someone who was very active socially. The next one. Oh, there it is. Yep. Then I started dating somebody who was very active socially. We started having conversations about the issues of race, religion, sexuality, gender equality, immigration, and so many other subjects. Then I moved to Cincinnati, and after that, he asked me to, and encouraged me to go with him to a Black Lives Matter march and rally. I agreed to go with him, but I was secretly terrified. I began to think about what all could go wrong. What if I got arrested? What would my friends think? What would my family think? And how might this affect future employment opportunities? All of that went away once we started marching. Tens of thousands of people marching through the streets of Cincinnati, shouting Black Lives Matter, and no justice, no peace. The tears began to well up in my eyes as drivers pulled over, got out of their cars, and started chanting right along with us. This experience was more than just political and social engagement. This was me putting my Christian faith into practice. In our text from Micah today, the people of Israel ask the prophet, "What does God want from us? Our cattle, our finest oils, our firstborn children?" Micah's response is, "You've already been told. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God." Now these seem like easy things to do. However, these three seemingly simple things have proved to be more challenging. This text is so rich and full that I could spend hours, days, or weeks just talking about it, but I only have a few minutes. So what does it mean to do justice? In our society, we have a justice system in place. We have police officers, judges, lawyers, we have organizations which fight for the rights of all people, and yet it doesn't seem to be enough. There are still inequalities and injustices for which we still have to fight. C.S. Lewis, in his book Mere Christianity, says, "We might think God wanted simply obedience to a set of rules, whereas he really wants a people of a particular sort." What kind of people? Well, I think God wants people who are going to organize, unite, and act up. As you probably know by now, Dr. Seuss is one of my favorite authors. His stories are fun, unique, memorable, and they have some really huge lessons from which we can learn regardless of our age. It's been so much fun revisiting some of these stories as I've been preparing for it today. Take Horton Hears a Who, for example. In this story, Horton, an elephant, hears a noise, and it turns out what he heard was a person, a who, living on a speck of dust as it floated past Horton. The whos are afraid that the speck of dust on which they live will float into the pool in which Horton is relaxing. Horton then takes it upon himself to protect the speck of dust, and in turn, the whos who live on it. The other animals in the jungle think that Horton has lost his marbles and aren't afraid to tell him what they think. Horton, however, is determined to protect the whos regardless. Some of the other animals come up with a plan to take the clover, which Horton is protecting, and has placed on top of this piece of clover, and destroy it. But Horton follows the vulture which has taken this speck of dust and has dropped it into a field of clover. Finally, after hours and hours and hours of searching, Horton finds the one clover that had the whos on it. The other animals are now convinced that Horton has lost it. They're going to destroy the speck of dust once and for all. And Horton calls out to all of the whos and tells them that they have to gather together and make as much noise as possible so the other animals can hear them and believe that Horton has been telling the truth this whole time. So they do. The whos gather together and yell and scream and bang drums and make as much noise as possible, but it's not enough. Horton then asks the mayor if everyone is there. So the mayor searches the city and finds little Jojo. And it's not until Jojo, who's described as being the smallest of all, gives out a little extra little yelp that all the other animals in the jungle can finally hear and finally believe that Horton has been telling the truth this whole time, that there are people on this little speck of dust. In this story, Horton is doing justice. He's doing justice by sticking up for the little people. But not only that, Horton encouraged all of the Whos to organize together and lift up their voices so that they could be heard. This is also a good story for the other scripture of today from the book of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. In this passage, Jesus is telling his disciples, he's teaching his disciples, and he starts talking about people who are considered to be less than in society. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, etc. But then in the last two verses of the gospel reading, Jesus switches it, and he says, "Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you, falsely on my account." He's speaking directly to the disciples at this point. See, Jesus knew that the people were going to ridicule, mock, and lie about the disciples. And so Jesus warned them and essentially told them to stick it out because it'll be worth it. He says, "Your reward is great in heaven." Similarly, Horton knew it was worth it. He took the ridicule and the mocking because he knew for what he was fighting. When we stand up for what we believe to be right, there will always be people who are going to ridicule us, mock us, and won't understand why we are standing, marching, protesting. When we organize, like the Whos did, our voices and the voices of all people will be heard. Another great story of Dr. Seuss is that of the Sneetches. This one was a bit of a new one for me, and it was published in 1953. And in this story are the creatures that resemble birds. Some have stars on their bellies and others don't. Those with the stars believe themselves to be better than those without stars. So the Sneetches without stars want to be like those with stars. But the Sneetches with stars aren't having any of it. Then comes the smooth-talking salesman with a machine that will put stars on the Sneetches' bellies for just a few dollars. So they're excited that they finally are going to get some stars. But then the Sneetches, who originally had stars, still think that they are superior and ask the man with the machine to remove their stars. And so he does, for $10. So Sneetches are getting stars put on, Sneetches are getting stars taken off, and the Sneetches are getting confused and can't remember who originally had stars and who didn't. And by the end of the story, the Sneetches have spent all their money and have also realized that they ultimately are all the same. Having a star or not having a star doesn't make one group better than the other. And the last picture in the book is that of two Sneetches, one with a star and one without, walking hand in hand. This is another way of doing justice. When we unite together, seeing everyone as a child of God, we are living out Micah 6:8. We're able to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. The word here for love kindness in Hebrew is hesed, which has this meaning of loyal love. And one translation actually translates it as embracing faithful love. And this kind of love was one that was usually expressed towards those who are meek, those who are less than. And we know from the Old and the New Testaments both that loving your neighbor is one of the greatest commandments. And when we unite together, seeing each person and loving each person as God does, we can make this world a better place. And then finally, there's the story of Yertle the turtle. Yertle the turtle was king of the pond, and king of everything that he saw. The problem, though, was the more he saw, the more he wanted. So he commanded some turtles to stand one on top of the other, so that way Yertle could be on top and see much more. But again, the more he saw, the more he wanted. So he commanded more turtles to build this tower, and now Yertle could see for miles and miles and miles, but he still wasn't satisfied. And finally, this little turtle on the very bottom, whose name was Mac, he said to the king, "Your Majesty, please, I don't like to complain, but down here below we are feeling great pain. I know up on top you are seeing great sights, but down at the bottom, we too should have rights. We turtles can't stand it, our shells will all crack. Besides, we need food, we are starving," groaned Mac. He'd had enough, so he let out a little burp and toppled the whole turtle tower. And this brought King Yertle to the ground and to the mud. Who knew that one little turtle acting up could bring such a powerful figure down? Mac, by letting out one little burp, brought down an entire system of oppression. Now, the stories of Dr. Seuss are fun, silly, and some would even say foolish. One other scripture for today, which I didn't use, is 1 Corinthians 1, verses 18 to 31. And I would really highly recommend and encourage you to read these when you get a chance. But in verses 27 and 28, it says, "But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are." So for me, things which might not make sense to us at first glance can be much more effective than we think. We may not understand why people organize and march or protest. For me, it's a way of putting my faith in action. It's a way of living out those requirements of Micah 6:8, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. And to do that, I can remember the words of Horton and also the Lorax, who said, "A person's a person no matter how small, and unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not." Amen. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the love that you have shown to us, and I ask that you would help us to go out into our community and into our world and to show that love to everyone that we meet, that we are all your children and that you have created all of us as such, and that we should show that love because you've commanded us to do so. And I pray that you would help us to raise our voices so that way we can do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with you. And now, let us join together and say the prayer that Jesus taught us by saying, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen."
See you tomorrow, or see you next Saturday, same time, same place. And remember that God is always on